This is the Static Site Fan Club. Welcome. Wait,
Static Site Fan Club.
yeah. Let's that just rolls off the tongue. I feel like that should be it.
Yeah, I agree. I think someone else, independent of our stream, has posted it in my sphere this week. They were a part of those Static Site Fan Club, and so I mean that kind of cements it for me.
Yeah, that's it. A poll of one, and we're done.
Yeah, that's kind of what we had said originally. I think too.
Yeah.
The first
So
mention.
today we're gonna do some web components. We're gonna do some www news, and we're gonna do some RSS readers. So yeah, really keen to get into it.
Yeah, maybe not in that order, but I think we are going to start with the web components, the web component roundup. And let me present my screen. Here we maybe go.
Hey, Chris. Chris Bernal.
Maybe get it so I can see the chat. All right, great. Yeah, so I think we've done this segment once before where we sort of talk about a couple of web components that have floated into my sphere and web components that I thought were, just sort of cool examples. And there are so many of these that it's hard to pick. So I'm just like slowly working through this giant backlog of them. And I think maybe we'll go through, I don't know, like 4 or 5 every week, and we'll see how long we can go. And just as sort of background and clarification, I do kind of prefer like framework independent web components. I know that a lot of folks will do like just like a light wrapper, or they'll have like a base element that they'll extend in their web component. But I think, I don't know, the ones that I get the most mileage out of have 0 dependencies, and they don't require any boilerplate or any extra dependencies to load in your usage of them. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to kind of maybe focus on a little bit, but I'm sure some framework ones will sneak in here and there. This one I started, I'm just going to start with from Nathan Noller. He has a restart animations web component, which I thought was really cool. Let's click through to the demo on CodePen. It will restart your animation of any animations that you have inside of the, or maybe scoped to the element itself, which I think is pretty cool. Got a couple of different options here. Let's look at the markup for it. Oh, this is just a custom element that just resets maybe all the animations. I don't think maybe I understood that before I brought it up, but yeah, it's kind of a neat thing. And then maybe you can scope it. Here we go. Yeah, you can scope it to a specific maybe keyframe name. Scoped. Move to, yeah, there you go. Scoped, move to right. Yeah, that's cool. And then moving along, I think tables is like this classic use case, I think, for web components generally, especially HTML web components. I have one called Table Saw that sort of makes responsive, like a mobile view of a table layout. And Raymond Camden has this other great one, Data Tables, which I believe adds some sorting functionality to a table. They have a blog post here that sort of walks through it. But yeah, I think that is just I love this sort of super focused use case, because I think a lot of table utilities and libraries go really hard into like, we provide every feature that you'd ever want.
That's it.
And they're just so heavy that it ends up pricing out a lot of use cases, that a lot more lightweight use cases that I would opt in for. Maybe just I want sorting. It's a very small thing to add. So yeah, I thought this was great.
Theodore Alan was wondering, mind pasting the link in the chat?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me find my chat.
Yeah, I feel like just I feel like just doing these streams and talking to you a whole bunch, my mindset has completely changed about what I want from a library and like how I think about building for the web as well. Um, like
Yeah, I mean,
lightweight gives you so much flexibility, right? You can build a lot on top of that.
yeah, it gives you flexibility on how you use it, how you load it. It really unlocks a lot more uh, accessibility in terms of the audience that you can serve these things to. Because lightweight use cases, yeah, it just allows you to use it in lower powered hardware, maybe worse network conditions. So yeah, it does unlock quite a few things. But I think there also is the maintenance piece of it too, right? Like I have this bias where I don't want to have to uh, maintain something a ton. So the more lightweight and focused a use case is, I feel like the less maintenance burden you have to put into it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and it's like
um,
I feel like the full-fledged library is gonna try and do a bunch on the UI as well, and then, like,
yeah,
if you're fitting that into a style of a website, suddenly I'm having to, like, hack around and override stuff and display none a whole bunch, and it's nice if it just
yeah,
doesn't do it, and then I get to build that stuff myself.
yeah, and that sort of architecture pattern doesn't grow very well either. Like
Mm,
a library that is trying to solve all the problems will have a much higher growth potential, I think, in the code that they deliver. And if you don't have your tech stack architected in such a way that it does all of the tree shaking and the like unused code removal that you might want, then your website gets slower for no extra functionality,
yeah,
which is not the best thing to deliver. And we'll put all of these links in the show notes too as well. I thought this one was just sort of kind of random, and I don't think I'll probably be able to share my sound here, but it's a guitar tuner. So you can like click these, and it will play the notes to tune your guitar.
it's awesome.
Um, yeah, which I thought was great because just recently I tried to download like an iOS app to tune a guitar. Um, because I have a guitar, but I don't really know how to play one. But yeah, my kids were interested in sort of playing with it, and yeah, I got it out. And the iOS apps, there's just a lot of them, and they are some of them more reputable than others. So this was
Yeah.
like a very cool, yeah, just alternative to that.
It's always amazes me how many ads you can get in a guitar tuning app. Like,
Yes, it's pretty wild,
yeah.
and not just ads, but like yeah, the all of the extra data that they might be collecting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought this one was great. If you go to Taylor Bassetta's website, they actually have like server timings is like a thing that's built into the HTTP headers that you can send back from your website if you're doing any sort of dynamic processing. And you can include like these server timings in your response headers, and this will render them. So maybe the best example is to go to Taylor's website because I know they use it. Oh, maybe I have it in the next tab. Nope. Well, that is his website. So you can kind of see it at the bottom. Um, and I think that's all server timings and using that server timing web component, which is kind of cool. The color contrast could maybe be better there, but yeah. Um, oh, I don't think this was related. It was just a tab that showed the server timing. So I worked around that. We got to it eventually, but yeah. Um, this one I thought was really cool. I used to work with Matt Steele years and years ago at Union Pacific Railroad. Um, and they have one that basically they're very interested in like Bluetooth and exposing Bluetooth devices on the web. And so, yeah, they built a Bluetooth device web component,
Wow.
which I thought was super cool. Um, And I think they have a bunch of talks about sort of Bluetooth connectivity as well. This is a 2020 blog post, so they've been doing it for a while. But yeah, I
So
think
what?
that one of the demos I've seen is of them hooking up like a Nintendo controller to their browser. Um, and yeah, you can do all
Interesting.
sorts of experiments with that. But yeah, I've seen them do a talk live actually about this, and they have so many just weird examples. I think Matt is sort of addicted to buying these like, I don't know, like junk, cheap Bluetooth devices and seeing what they can hook up with them.
I love that.
I'm trying to remember like the example. They had like one that would, oh, okay, here's what it was. I was watching them do this talk live, and they had a thermos or like a temperature, a thermometer that was Bluetooth connected, and they used the temperature changes to navigate in between their slides for the talk. So he had like this thermos that was full of ice water, and he took like the thermometer and put it in the ice water to like navigate to the next slide. And if he took it out, then it would go back. I don't know. I don't
That's
remember all
pretty
the
cool.
rules he had, but yeah, it was all web-based slides too. It was, yeah, it was crazy. I'm sure they have that talk linked up here. That was like a Nebraska JS talk
Yeah,
from
it's
back in
like
the day.
things. It's demos like that seem really silly, but it's like it really just makes you think differently about the web
Yeah.
and what it means to browse the web. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, there's like a ton of these sort of extra device specifications that may or may not be like cross-browser standards that are available everywhere, but they still are kind of cool, and they unlock some different things that you may not have considered before. Troy Vasilati has this one called Cloudy Sky, and maybe there's a demo here. So clouds. I don't know. I kind of like these like ambient ones that are just sort of in the background. I had one that's called Snowfall that we worked on for the Taylor Swift Cloud Cannon demo for internationalization. We did around Christmas time, and yeah, that had a Snowfall web component on it. Just showed some snow on the page.
So
Yeah, I
why
kind of like
why do
these.
this with a web component over like, because you could do it with purely CSS, right?
Yeah, you could. I think the use case is sort of packaging up the code in a way
Mm,
that is more reusable.
mm,
Um, I mean, you could do a just a CSS file that people could import, and that would be another way to deliver it. And you could also do some extra CSS work around reduced motion for this, so it doesn't display when
mm.
you have a reduced motion preference. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that specific one is a great use case for this, other than it's just
Because
a different way to load the assets.
the big downside is it doesn't work if you don't have JavaScript enabled, which
Yeah, which you always have to be mindful of for sure. But
mm,
for an ambient use case like this, I don't think it. I
yeah,
think that this strikes an okay balance there.
it's fair. But you don't
Um,
lose any functionality.
yeah, I mean, the reason I like using web components for this kind of thing is that then I can control the loading behavior of the assets using island, like the
Mm,
island architecture web component. That just sort of, you can set a bunch of sort of centralized loading conditions for your web component assets. So I could have this lazy load when the component that's using it is visible. And I don't think that that would be something that you could do with a pure CSS approach.
interesting.
So yeah, Troy has another one called Typewriter, which I believe, great, they got a demo here, types text. And that was kind of an interesting animation. We need the restart animation button here.
Yeah, start pulling these web components together.
Yeah, but you could kind of see it did like half characters. Yeah, that's wild. I like that. Yeah, that's
So it
right. I
must
want to
be
officially zoom it in.
doing. Should we guess how it's doing it? I think it's doing like a
Like a
width.
clip.
Yeah, with a
Yeah.
clip on it. And it like
Yeah,
animates
that's
the width, does it?
yeah, I bet it does. Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I mean, doesn't it's not like true to the typewriter animation that you might expect if you've used a typewriter, but I don't know, it's more fluid.
Yeah.
It seems a little bit more natural,
Hmm.
not as jerky. I don't know, I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
CSS Doodle, a web component for drawing patterns with CSS. And this is like a DSL almost of just like there some custom code to generate a pattern,
Hmm.
um, which is kind of cool. I
Wow.
don't know. A lot of the examples they have on their site are pretty incredible.
Jeez.
So yeah, they went hard on these demos here.
I bet for that one we saw before, like I want to call it the Pac-Man one. I wonder what the files like over the payload like overhead is for that. Because I
Mm,
imagine it's way smaller than the image or some sort of repeating image.
yeah. Yeah, I'd have to look at how much this web component weighs, but you can click on it and it randomizes it. I didn't realize that.
Mm, yeah, so you can have it
That's cool.
like you just couldn't do that with an image.
Right,
Or
yeah. Yeah, and that almost comes back to the static dynamic question of server-side rendering stuff as well. This is the client-side piece of it, right?
mm,
Um, yeah, if you tried to you couldn't server render this use case even in a
mhm,
dynamic setting, or you
yeah,
wouldn't want to because it wouldn't make sense for responsive. Yeah. So very cool. That's yeah,
yeah.
those are the web components I got today. If folks have other ones they want to recommend, definitely hit us up either in chat here or yeah, on social media for sure. We'll try and get them featured.
Nice. Yeah, that was a great roundup. I always learn something going through that.
Yeah, there's just so much sort of creativity going on in the web component space right now. Um, yeah, it's sort of a web components renaissance, I think, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like something I've been hearing a lot about the indie web is that like this is a creative outlet for and you see it you see it in the web components, right? um
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
and personal
business use
websites
case
and all
of
that stuff.
the Pac-Man is I'm sure there is a business use case, but it's just someone wants to create something cool and they build it. I love that.
Yeah, and they share it and they post these awesome demos and documentation on it. Um, which I think when I open source a thing, I sometimes write the documentation selfishly because I want to remember how to use it
Yeah,
myself in a few years when I inevitably come back to it. Um, and yeah, I love when people share stuff like that.
don't know if you've covered it yet, but I love Storage Form by David Dons.
David Jones. Yeah, that's great. We'll have a look at that next time. I'll make a note.
Okay, so next up, either dub news or yeah, let's do dub news, and we can finish on the RSS reader.
Okay, yep. Let me bring it up. All right, this one was a tweet, not a tweet. I need to like burn that phrase from my vocabulary. But yes, this was a post from Christian. And I actually did not know this, even though I've used session storage in a bunch of different places. I should have known this. I feel like there's going to be a couple of things today where I'm like, I should have known this, but I didn't remember it. And session storage doesn't sync across multiple browser tabs. When you create a new tab, it doesn't save your session storage. So there's a couple of different ways to save data in the browser client side. And yeah, local storage is the one that sort of persists even when the user closes the tab or comes back to the site later. That data will stick around. And session storage is sort of the one that when you close the tab, it goes away. And I've used that one quite a bit for web font loading optimizations where you sort of needed a little bit more control in the client side rendering of web fonts. Most of my demos use session storage, but I may have, I don't know, I may think that local storage might be a better option for those. But yeah, that was sort of a thing that I wasn't aware of.
It's kind of like storing something in RAM versus disk, right?
Yeah.
It's a similar decision, and maybe not the same trade-offs, because I imagine they're the same speed, but yeah, different use cases.
I mean, there are sort of classic drawbacks. There's a lot of, I feel like, articles that were written, and this may not be a problem anymore, but that local storage was sort of like a synchronous thing where it did require writing to disk, and it was kind of a performance burden. But as always, you should test your code to see what it's doing. But yeah, I thought that was just a good one to shout out. This is another one that I sort of thought that I should have known, but I didn't know. I mean, I understood that to iterate over an object in JavaScript, you can sort of use this destructuring method and with object entries, but I did not know you could still use for without creating your own loop index with the same sort of approach with an array. And I'll probably be using this in a bunch of different places because I don't like the sort of the for loops where you have to declare an index and set it to 0 and then check the length every time. I don't know. That seems almost quaint compared to this approach. I like this a lot better. And the browser support for this was sort of remarkably good too. Whenever I want to check like a browser support of a Node feature, a Node.js feature, I got a node.green. And if you go to entries, array prototype entries, you can see that it's browser support all the way back to, I don't know, we're getting into like Node 4 or something now. So yeah, the support's really good. And yeah, I'll probably be using this in a bunch of different places in my code. Look for this in the 11D code base soon. I put up this post this last week, and I don't know, we don't need to touch on it too much, but I feel like as a web development in the web performance space, we've sort of been going through this issue where a lot of our tools will claim to be fast, but they're only best case fast, or they're fast on high quality hardware, expensive hardware, or high quality network connections. And I think it's worth shouting that out. I think Liam had a great reply here. Performance ceiling versus performance floor. I really like that. And it this illustrates it very well. So whenever you pick a web framework, make sure that you're testing your code with real users and real devices, and not just expensive devices too, because it may advertise that it's fast, but it's only fast for those wealthy devices on wealthy networks. So Ben had a great post this week about text wrap pretty and text wrap balance. That's just a sort of way to for, I think, large headers or text that doesn't wrap like more than 3 or 4 lines, and it will sort of space those out to be to render a little bit better and sort of spread your words out across those lines rather than having like all the text on one line and then one word on the next line, which I think is typically referred to as like an orphan in typographic terms. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that term, but yeah, it is what it is. But the browser support is pretty good for this as well. Text wrap balance is already on Firefox. We're waiting for it on Safari. And I use this on my personal site too. And there's a text wrap. Where's pretty? Not quite as good.
I've seen balance. I haven't used Pretty before. What does Pretty do?
That is a good question. I don't know that I know the difference between Pretty and balance. I've used balance. Pretty results in the same behavior as wrap, except that the user agent will use a slower algorithm that favors better layout over speed. It's intended for body copy. Okay, so it's balance is sort of intended for those things that are like, I think, maximum of 3 or 4 lines. So headers normally. And Pretty you can use on your body copy as well, which is great.
Yeah, interesting.
Today we learned live on the stream.
Yeah.
Another one that's coming, Popover. So Popover is sort of the standard web standard way to do these sort of more complex tooltips. And Popover target is the way to invoke those. So this is completely without JavaScript, which is a sort of an amazing thing to have as part of the web platform. It's not even in Firefox yet, but I think it's coming to Firefox. I think it's almost it's pending. But just these 2 lines of code, you can get a more complex tooltip. And the reason I shot this out is Hitty has a great blog post about sort of the built-in accessibility features that you get with Popover. And we won't go through it too much today, but this is a very detailed post that I would recommend reading. And then also in the same space, I think Adam Argyle has this steal this Popover code, which is just sort of a walkthrough of the code you can do to animate those popovers as well, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, check that out. And this is also related to, where did that go? There's a sort of a larger initiative that's being worked on right now called Invokers. And this is just sort of a way to hook this up to other things that aren't popovers. I think popover is sort of was the first example of this, and now we're trying to generalize it as a web standard for a variety of different things. So the code might look familiar because we're using invoke target instead of popover target, but yeah, it's a similar thing, but just a more general specification that will apply to a lot more. So yeah, I think this is great, and definitely watch for this to come down in web browsers as well. We kind of talked about some Node.js stuff last week, specifically, I think, ECMAScript modules and common JS compatibility. And this is another one that I think is built in, or we use it a lot in 11D because 11D sort of iterates over the file system quite a bit. But we use a third-party tool, I think, called FastGlob to do that, third-party dependency. And so, yeah, it's awesome to see Node getting sort of first-party support for this. I think it will be huge for 11D's performance. We sort of do a lot of extra legwork to make sure that we're not doing a ton of like very complex file system operations, and querying very deep directory structures is a very expensive thing. So yeah, I'm very excited to see this sort of come into Node Core.
Yeah, it's amazing it's not already. Like, it just seems like such a basic file system thing you would want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just when I first started working with Node.js, I think I was kind of surprised at some of the like file system based code that you have to write.
Mm,
I think there's some more complexity that I would like to see solved in core, specifically around like there's some bugs in Windows with how many files you can have open simultaneously. And that might be a Windows limitation, it might be a node limitation, I'm not sure, but we've sort of farmed that out to third-party library or third-party dependencies as well to sort of work around this performance problem of having like these large scale file system operations happening simultaneously. Um, and yeah, that's something I think we've had in or we've dealt with in 11D for a while, because when you get up into
mm.
those like your 40, 50, 60,000 page builds, there are some hard limitations in different operating systems on how many files you can have open. But I don't
Yeah.
want to get too in the weeds on that. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we just got a message from Chris. Popover is great. Oddbird has a polyfill for it, if which I'm using until we see more green tiles on can I use. And
Oh
so
yeah,
I
that's
the polyfill.
awesome. Oddbird, great work from them for sure.
Thanks, Chris.
Miriam is just so prolific in the CSS specification space. Oh, I did want to shout out. So Ricky, super fan of the static site fan club, published a reply to our stream post last week on social media with the link to Seme's web dev feeds repo. It's just an OPML that you can use to get just a ton of web development RSS feeds.
Yeah, this is how I stress test 11 feed, the RSS reader I'm
Oh,
building.
nice. Yeah. Amazing.
Well, I haven't yet, but imagine just importing 1,000 RSS feeds.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's more than 1,000. I'm curious how
Mm.
many are in there now, but yeah, I love this. This is sort of how I got my start in technical writing on the internet, is that I got listed in one of these like popular OPML feeds. I think Paul Irish had an OPML feed and I got in there somehow and yeah, got more eyes on my stuff. So yeah, I always love to see people share their feeds. I won't go into this one too much, but there is sort of a way to make your own CSS property, CSS custom property, and define it. And you can do that with @property, and it looks like it's coming to Firefox. This is like maybe, I don't know, level 10 CSS. And most folks probably won't need to use this, but Anna is just one of those people that is so incredibly talented in the CSS space. So if you're interested in very advanced CSS, I would recommend following them. And checking out @property as a way to define your own CSS custom properties. And yeah, some validation around those as well. You can set like what kind of units that you want for the property and yeah, all of that stuff. So it's very cool.
I can't even imagine like what I would do with that. That's incredible.
Yeah, you should check out some of their code pins. I'm sure there'll be some good examples in there. I really like this command line tool that someone linked to. It's called Monolith. It basically is this command line tool where you install it and then you point it at a website, and it will basically take all of the resources on that website and inline them all into one HTML file.
Nice.
So it's kind of
That's
like an
awesome.
archival tool. I think it's also maybe a very cheap and easy way to see how big a site is without having to bring it up in your browser and look at the network tab, which I don't know, it isn't that big of a deal. But I do think that I feel like there's some advanced use cases this might unlock, that it's just sort of good to be aware of this tool and aware of the things that you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, like just for archival purposes, like if you just take the HTML and all the files on the site, it's probably referencing a bunch of external stuff too.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I think you're right. Just knowing like you have this box and that's the website and everything the website needs is a powerful idea.
Yeah, I think the one sort of limitation that I ran into is that if you have JavaScript generated content, it won't. It sort
Mm,
of takes the like view source version or the server rendered version of the markup, but you can actually, they have an example where you can pipe it from headless Chromium
mm,
direct into this tool. So you can get like the server or the client rendered version of a site and then pipe that into this as well. So
interesting.
yeah, very powerful. I think a bunch of people probably saw this one floating around today. I wish I had the source from this actually. But it's a 3D DOM viewer. It's like a bookmarklet. So they publish the source code on this website, and you can go to their gist and basically copy and paste this code into any web pages console, which is not maybe the best security practice, but you can look through the entirety of the unminified source code to make sure that it's okay here. And I think that this one's probably fine, but it renders the DOM in 3D, so you can almost visualize the different depths of sections of your site. And I've used this before to sort of look at web performance things where you have just a very, very deep, complex DOM and you don't know where it's coming from. Maybe you have like a huge HTML page, but you don't know where all of the markup, or it's hard to visualize where all of that markup is. And that's especially hard to do in like the DOM inspector because it doesn't show you how many child nodes are in a specific tree. But using this, you can see where sort of it sort of allows you to visualize your DOM complexity and where on the page that DOM complexity lives, which I think is a good tool. And Firefox used to have this built into DevTools,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
but yeah, I think they got rid of it for, I don't know, maintenance reasons or something. I'm
Mm.
gonna live post Chris's Mastodon link here. Hopefully it doesn't get me in trouble. Okay, great. Yeah, this is, yep, I think this is it. Oh, they have a, yeah, here it is, the animated
Yeah, I saw this one
version of
this
that.
morning.
Yeah, I think this is amazing, and I'll probably end up using this quite a bit.
Yeah, like if you're just coming into a new project and you want to like get the mental model of how it fits together, like, this is such a good tool just to take a look and get it in your head.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wish that current dev tools were a little bit better at showing you where you had those deeply nested trees. But yeah. I think we've linked to some Paul. We talked about some Paul stuff last week. Paul Covano, they just make a ton of things. But I think the tool we linked to of Paul's last week was around compression and Brotli compression, gzip, and Z standard, the new Z standard compression library, or the compression algorithm. Excuse me. But they also have this one I thought was worth shouting out about font subsetting. They have a tool that will analyze your web fonts as well, which I think is great because it sort of gives you an actionable way to say, I think I've talked so much about web performance in the past that it can be kind of hard to distill it down to one singular thing. But when you're loading web fonts on a page, it's a race between loading the font file before the text is visible, or before you have. So a lot of times when it comes to the initial render of a page, if the web font is used sort of above the fold and in that initial render, you need to preload it to get it loading as quickly as possible, and you're racing that request versus your initial render. So you want the web font to finish loading before your page renders. And there's a bunch of different things you can do. You can preload that. You can subset it to make it smaller so that it loads faster. A lot of different approaches, but this will sort of analyze your page and say how many characters are visible, and compare that to how many glyphs are loaded in your web font file. And yeah, there's just a ton of web performance optimization advice in this tool. So if you're interested in that, check it out.
I remember you telling me about a tool that will analyze a website and like
Yeah, I have a
take
command line tool. Yeah, it's called a glyph hanger. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you pitch it.
Yeah, it's called glyph hanger. It's a command line tool that basically wraps around Python's, I think it's Python's font tools, and just makes sort of a nicer node-based CLI for it, and shows you, how much you can save when you subset a web font, and it will subset your web fonts for you. But you can do the same thing with the Python PYFT subset as well. But the command for it is not quite as nice, but I don't know. You can use either or. They both work great. So yeah, this sort of font analyzer tool is a cloud-based website dev tool that you can use, but those are command line things. Yep. And then lastly, oh no, we already went through this one. So yeah, that was it. That was the last one. Now we play the outro for our the animated outro for the web development news segment.
Yeah.
Roll the clip.
We need to do a wipe.
We've talked about those very awkward star wipes that happen in the Star Wars universe before. I don't know why they keep doing those, but we need them.
Yeah, we do. All right. I've been fizzing for RSS time. I want to show you. I want to show and tell.
Here we go. Live demo.
All right. This is 11 feed. This is the 11T based RSS reader that I've been working on, and the goal is to create this open source project that people can host on their own websites and kind of have the RSS reader public that other people can see. So this is using real data now. I've got smashing in your blog, Zach.
Oh.
So I can click in and it will render that text.
Oh, wow.
And then dark mode.
Ooh.
Search.
Here we go.
Thanks to PageFund. And yeah, so I want to talk through some of the interesting kind of things that I've hit and conquered or built around. Yeah. So one is, I realized we kind of touched on this last week, but realized pretty quickly that you can't trust any data from an RSS feed.
Yeah. Yes.
So like with a title, like stripping out any tags and then HTML entertaining anything else, which I believe makes it very safe. I don't know how you would kind of break out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think still someone. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, we need to look into that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that if you're stripping tags and converting any sort of left angle brackets and right angle brackets to HTML entities, it's safe-ish.
What would make it safe?
There is I want to say there's like an HTML sanitizer.
Yeah, I think I saw this one.
Specification.
Okay, so I want to maybe I'll talk about the body text because that's kind of that you actually need tags in. So what I did first, I took your advice and did an iframe.
Mm.
And then you iframe can have I've forgotten an attribute, but basically you can just paste in the source code.
Source doc.
Yeah, source doc, and then you
Yeah.
can size it to be like, oh, oops, basically just be like transparent, so you can't tell it's an iframe. The
Mm.
problem I had encountered with that is the height of the iframe, because I wanted to completely sandbox the iframe, but then I needed JavaScript to go onto the iframe, work out the document height, and then adjust my iframe's height. And I was like, I don't really want to enable JavaScript in the iframe because that defeats the purpose.
Mm.
So what I ended up doing is taking the HTML, converting it to common mark, like, so it just strips out everything, and then converting that back
Mm.
into HTML. I think that's pretty safe because there's no like carryover of any HTML. There's no classes. There's no script tags. There's no attributes on anything. It's just like pure markdown.
So
Yeah,
you
what do you?
converted.
I'll show you.
Yeah, let me see. Because Markdown does support HTML, so you could still.
So this is common mark, so no HTML. It'll just like remove anything it doesn't recognize. So here's like my like safe string. Where are we? Strip HTML. So it's like removing any tags. And then escape is like replacing all those characters with HTML entity version of them. There's like my lookup table.
What template syntax are you outputting in?
Liquid.
Okay. It does have like an escape filter.
Yeah, true. I just wanted the data to be
Oh,
safe
okay.
without having to remember to do it at that level. Because this is basically iterating over the list of RSS feeds and
Mm.
downloading the all the content in RSS feeds. Yeah, then there's the safe content, which was that. Yeah,
Yeah, I
so I'm
mean, I
using
know there's been
turn
copy
down, like
pasting.
removing those, but anything it doesn't support in common mark, it will strip out anyway. Yeah, and then it's just saving it as markdown, and then when I go to output it,
What's the package that you're using that you keep referring to? Common Mark? I know
it's
that's
the library's turned down, but the standard is common mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think Common Mark is like the unofficial
Like
Markdown specification.
standard, yeah.
Yeah. Library that converts Markdown HTML into Markdown. Oh, I see. Okay. So Turndown is a HTML2 Markdown converter.
Yeah, so convert it to markdown and convert it back. But if you look at this output, like there's none of your like web components in there. There's no attributes. It's just like clean markup.
Huh.
So that was
Yeah, that's fascinating.
that was the conclusion I came to. Is I think that's pretty safe. Yeah, I think it's safe. I should say, not pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alternative is to use an. So we had sort of talked about that like column layout, and then that entire sort of hosted content frame would be an iframe
Yeah,
instead of the content being a separate frame. But
yeah. What I also explored is adding a button here that just everything like below that is an iframe of the actual website, so you could switch between this view,
oh yeah,
which would be awesome. But also quickly realized that most websites block just iframing with the header.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
that
that click checking fiasco that happened a while back. Yeah.
so that would have been
Mm.
cool, but I feel like that's not viable. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with this, and then can't quite see the bottom of my page. I think that yeah, and then I can click in here and see a list of my feeds. So in here is going to be the export. I always forget the format. But yeah, you'll be able to export someone's RSS feeds and then import it into your 11 feed. The one thing I wanted to get your take on is, I know this has come up a little bit with 11T, but paginating a paginated page,
Yeah.
classic. Because
The classic.
I want to be able to click on that and see all the lists of a Smashing
I don't know if I'm seeing
magazine.
what you're pointing to.
Oh, maybe I. Right, let me reshare. Was it just staying still the whole time?
I think the last change I saw was when you said I can't see the bottom.
Yeah, there. So this is a list of the RSS feeds, and we'll have the export there.
Okay.
So I want these categories that they're not hooked up at the moment, but I know what the categories are. So I want to paginate that, and then I want to be able to click on this and have that paginated for Smashing too. Which
Yeah, I mean, there are ways to do this in 11D because you do sort of have full control over the data chunking process that goes into pagination. But I mean, it's not as the developer experience of that is not as good as I would like it to be. And yeah, I think it's something we need to improve in 11D core because just a lot of people have asked for it.
yeah,
But the approach is that you sort of chunk the data yourself. And yeah, I mean, you can use a bunch of different ways. If we go to the 11D like issue tracker, I think this is one of the pinned features that or pinned requests that we have on our issue tracker. Yeah, core support for issue number 461. I'm gonna paste it right into chat. I feel like I did something in the same sphere very recently.
yeah. So you had on the Taylor Swift album thing. You had something. I kind of came across that.
Yeah, I feel like I posted an update somewhere. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, there's a comment all the way at the bottom of issue 332. I don't know what issue you're on right now.
Yeah, 332.
Yeah, 330. Yeah. So that link is probably the state of the art that I would recommend.
Okay.
But it does involve just sort of like manually chunking the page data yourself. And yeah, I think some of those arguments passed into that before callback are 3.0 specific. I think that second argument is 3.0 specific.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I changed to 3.0. That yeah, I haven't delved into this too much. I did see it. But the one bit I'm not sure about is I have an unknown amount of categories and RSS feeds, whereas this one's just on its languages. Yeah, so that would still work, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, the real takeaway here is that this is a problem that 11D needs to solve, because it keeps coming up, and I think that I I don't know, I can't visualize a way forward as the best developer experience or the best API to expose it as. I think that's maybe the core problem.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll show you what I want to do. And maybe I
yeah, that
I don't
might
know if
spark
this is
something.
I don't know if this is feasible, but so I have basically I end up with categories. Um and I want to add these as tags, but I don't think I can do that dynamically. Because if they were tags, then I could just list I could have a page that lists that and then paginate that page.
You can add, I mean, we have a JavaScript collection API where you
Mm.
can create your own collections with JavaScript.
Mm. Yeah, maybe I should do that. So like
And
as I'm
that's,
adding them, I could add them to the collection and then I could paginate that collection, right?
yeah, yeah, because there's two ways in 11D to create a collection. And one of them is the JavaScript API in your configuration file, and the other one is tags. So if
Mm.
you want to bypass tags, you can use JavaScript to create a collection as well.
Mm.
And they're both treated the same behind the scenes. So
Nice. I think that would work because then I would have all these extra collections, which then I could paginate, right?
yeah,
And I guess I would have two types. Like I would have one for these high level categories and then one for each RSS feed. Just have a whole bunch of categories and paginate them and yeah, if everything's a collection, like that's an easy problem to solve.
yeah, and we have sort of examples of how to do zero configuration, like tag collection pages. But I guess the further problem then becomes if you have so many collections that you then want to paginate the index page for those, then we
Mm,
get into the same problem again. So I mean, there might be some workarounds that we can add for this specific use case, but it's still like just
yeah.
another reminder, another vote in that bucket for. And yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we've known on the project for a while because that issue has been pinned to the top. I think the other issue that was pinned to the top for many years was ECMAScript modules. So it's
Mm,
nice to get that one unpinned. So maybe this is the next one
yeah.
and this one will be, I think, a much smaller lift than ECMAScript modules was.
Mm. Yeah, I think like this project has really opened my eyes and like I've done a bit with custom data sources and things, but there's like so much data manipulation and things here. I'm like, wow, it just feels so powerful being able to do this stuff.
Yeah, and you can have just a sort of boring HTML file that loads up super fast at the end.
That's
That's the
it.
thing I really love about build steps is that you can have all of this like super gnarly,
Yeah.
like almost very slow. Like you can collate from 1,000 different sources and it doesn't affect the user experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my number one super fan static site fan club, Jamstack, all of the things.
I agree. And there's one other thing I wanted to show you. We have this on the Cloud Kitten site, but you can see that request. It like waits. I think it waits 100 milliseconds. You can also do it on button down because
Oh, the
usually,
prefetch? Are you
yeah,
prefetching? Oh, nice.
because usually a click is button up, so you can make this library do it on button down, and so you've
Mm.
got that extra like 100 milliseconds to start loading the page, and like it feels so fast. I mean, these network requests are tiny. Like the CSS is what 6, JavaScript is 7 KB. This isn't even gzipped either. But
Yeah,
it's
it'll be
actually
interesting to see it on a server.
hmm,
Because yeah, localhost is maybe a little bit of cheating, but
That's
it's still
fair.
going to be fast. Yeah.
But it's actually a spa. Like it's not doing a full request for these.
Oh, what?
It's progressive enhancement, but this is doing it through JavaScript.
Oh, I didn't know that. Are you kidding me right now?
No,
I feel like I've been hoodwinked.
I mean it's you could turn JavaScript off and it would basically work exactly the same. It's just that slight like perceived performance, which probably no one's even going to notice, but I like having it. Where um wait, or maybe it is prefetch. No, it is doing it through JavaScript. See, look,
Wait, what
okay,
library are you using to do this?
I'll show you. It's nice. It's like pretty much just drop in, insta click.
Oh, instant click. Okay. Yeah, because some of them use prefetch and some of them
Yeah, this is
more
like
like
it's
turbo links or whatever, where it like actually injects the
yeah, I
content
think
with
it's
JavaScript.
injecting because like it does that request,
Oh
the
wow, yeah, you're
glitch,
right.
and then nothing.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know if it's controversial, but I feel like it's a good progressive enhancement. Like I don't really see the downside. Well, the one downside actually is you can't use window load or document ready. You use instaclicks change, and it is the equivalent of document load, but then every time you change, it will run it again. So I've had
Yeah,
like a little bit of weirdness there, just getting that to work properly. But other than that, it's pretty drop in and just works.
yeah. I mean, I think that there are some limitations in doing that, just like you suggested with sort of JavaScript that needs to run when the page initializes or changes. We sort of dealt with some of those same things with the 11D dev server, because we have like a DOM diff mode built in where it will just update the nodes on your page that have changed without reloading the page when you save your 11D build. But then for like JavaScript generated stuff, it sort of breaks down
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
it
it'll
thinks
break
that it's
down real
changed, but it
quick.
hasn't changed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's nice about having this real simple architecture is there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot to mess up.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, that's where I'm at. Like the two things I have left and before I want to release this is one, like the categories, and two, just being able to export a list of your RSS feeds, and then I feel like it's good to go. At least
Yeah, you
for
made great
V1.
progress.
Yeah, I'm real in it.
You're deep in the side project mentality now.
Yeah. It's my evenings just plugging away on this. But I just
Nice.
want to
Yeah.
use it. That's my motivation.
Yeah. That's the best tools.
Mm.
You're a customer.
We got Chris. Any idea if you can inject a prefetch into the head with JS after the document is loaded? I think so. I think if with JavaScript you just put it in the head, it would then prefetch that asset, right?
I don't really know how those libraries work. Isn't there like a JavaScript API for prefetch?
That would make
Maybe
sense.
not. Yeah, I don't think there is. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably how it works, but you'd have to. Oh wait, there's a speculation rules API. I don't know. That would be worth testing.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that's how those libraries work behind the scenes.
Mm.
But maybe it's just a standard fetch. I don't know.
I've got a feeling I do that on Cloud Cannon. Let's have a look. Present again. We're gonna wrap this up after this.
Oh wow, we're over time.
Yeah.
Illegal stream.
Okay, loads a whole bunch of stuff, and then what if I hover?
Oh yeah, I see some network requests when you're hovering over on the nav.
What's that? Non-binding aborted. What's that? And that's huge file.
That's probably an extension.
Yeah, that. Geez, what's happening there? All right, something to look into. The old half megabyte for a pricing page.
No,
Yes.
I think it might have been just a script that was part of an extension that you have on your browser.
Yeah. All right, I'll have a look
I
into
did
it.
not see that on mine.
Yeah. All right. That was a good session. Yeah, we're slowly getting the format down of the Static Site fan club.
Yeah, should we wrap
Chris,
it
thanks
up?
for joining. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah,
We'll see you
thanks.
next week.
Later, y'all.